Welcome to the opening bell of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Connor Rogers joining you guys in the middle of the week. Hump Day. It's a Wednesday edition of the show, which means it is time to update the 2023 NFL draft order. Give you guys a little bit of an update on some team needs, where we could see the draft flowing with this current draft order. But because it is the month of December and we're getting some declarations from prospects going into this draft class, we're going to talk to you about some updated guys who have already put their name into the I almost said transfer portal, into the draft class. Some guys who have already said they're coming back to school. And then we'll get a little bit into the transfer portal, some prospects that we like who might be changing locations next college football season. Connor, how are we feeling, my guy?
Good, man. This is a crazy time of year. It's honestly one of the hardest aspects of being an individual doing the entire draft, right? Like you and I, Trevor, I think of guys like Dane, guys that do cover the entire draft, but don't have a scouting team or anything like that, where tracking is a very tedious process. It's not the fun part of watching big time throws or rankings or grades or team fits. You're just trying to keep up with who the hell is in the damn thing. And I'll tell you what, right now, it's gotten crazier than ever because the transfer portal, especially in the quarterback market, has almost become the NFL free agency, a college football now free agency, that guys that honestly would typically leave even after maybe not having the best year or having enough on their platter to prove to teams that they're going to go in the first 3 rounds. They still go anyway. Now they can go back to school, get a couple $1 million sometimes, and try to reboost that draft stock. So this process has actually somehow gotten crazier than ever.
Yeah, and NIL too, right? Like that's the other
exactly with the millions. Yes,
big part of it. Of you get guys who before, I think you had a lot of these players, especially underclassmen, look at their situations they were in and say, okay, well, I've got another year of eligibility left, but it was the question that we would all pose. It's like, hey, it's a violent game. Do you really want to spend another year in college knowing that's another year of hits, another year of potential injury without putting your name on a piece of paper that guarantees you millions while you're still healthy? And I think that was a big debate up to this point, but we are already seeing, both with the transfer portal and with guys who have said that they're going to come back to school, the effects of NIL and how it is definitely making an impact on the draft class. We will get to that kind of towards the end of the podcast, but I did want to start with the draft order as we always do. Connor, at number 1, no changes. No changes. I still don't think there's going to be any changes by the time we get to the end of the year. Houston Texans. If Houston was going to win another game this year, it felt like it was going to be this week, right? Deshaun Watson coming to town. It's in Houston. It was the emotional game. You were supposed to beat him. They did not. Deshaun Watson did not look good, but Houston still was not able to win that game. So they fall to 1-10-1 on the season. Chicago Bears, because of their loss to the Green Bay Packers, which looked like they were going to win that game for a little bit before Aaron Rodgers, once again, called Chicago his second home. They have the number 2 overall pick. Seattle Seahawks have the number 3 pick via the Denver Broncos. Detroit Lions have the number 4 pick via the Los Angeles Rams. New Orleans, because of their epic collapse on Monday Night Football, they are giving the Philadelphia Eagles a top 5 pick right now, the number 5 overall. Carolina's at number 6, Jacksonville number 7, Arizona at 8, Indianapolis 9, Atlanta sitting there at 10. So before we go on to the rest of the order, Connor, anything really stand out to you with the top 10 as it stands after week 13 in the league?
Of course, the very obvious that, if Chicago really somehow holds on and picks number 2 overall, that is going to be an auction that could be fascinating to watch if they want to get out of that pick, or if they just want to stay tight and get a, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter type of situation. The Colts climbing, Trevor. They've lost 3 in a row now, and things could not look worse, maybe, I would say. Going into that fourth quarter, they're stumbling, hanging around, and they didn't look like a football team in that fourth quarter. They've lost 3 in a row, and if you're a Colts fan, as Trevor and I always say, keep hoping for those losses, because you are now really 2 more losses away from finding yourself in the top 5. And I think that's where you need to be. So those are the big ones for me. Of course, the exciting one is always that the Eagles are still sitting in the top 5 with that Saints pick, which is just absolutely insane.
I'll start with the Colts, and we can talk about the Colts here. Colts got 4 games left in this season. They're at Minnesota, hosting the Chargers, at the New York Giants, and then hosting the Texans. What do you think? 2-2, probably. And you're getting at least one win out of the Texans. My question is, are you getting a win when you host the Chargers day after Christmas? That's Monday Night Football. I don't think you're beating the Giants. I don't think you're beating the Giants in New York. I don't think you're beating the Vikings in Minnesota. So I think at best they're, well, it depends on how you look at it. At best, in terms of a win perspective, they could be 3-1. They could go, 2-2 down the stretch. But I don't really see anything better than that. Worst case scenario, probably 1-3. I don't see them losing all 4.
Sounds about right. I think, man.
The tie screws them, man.
It's the tie. It's the damn tie.
We've said this so many times before.
Carolina's so early.
Carolina's 4-8. Jacksonville's 4-8. Arizona's 4-8. Indianapolis, they're also 4-8 and 1. So it doesn't matter. They're going to be in between. They're going to be at the very bottom of that. Oh man, that's going to be a killer for the Colts. Going back to that week 1 tie there. I have a trivia question for you and the listeners. This is for anybody who did not watch It's Just Football earlier this week. How many times have the Jacksonville Jaguars picked in the top 10 in the last 15 years? Tell me how many times that they have picked in the top 10 in the last 15 years. So how many years out of 15 do you think, Jackson?
Right off the top of my head, I'd say 12.
Okay. The answer is 14.
Wow.
The only year that they have not picked in the top 10 since 2007 is the year they went to the AFC Championship.
Yeah.
Every other year since 2007, they have picked in the top 10.
That's remarkable. That's remarkable.
This is the show for you, Jags fans. Smash subscribe.
Smash subscribe.
I just button down below. Mike Renner said this out on the Monday show, and I couldn't believe it.
No, that's crazy. I mean, I did wonder when I said, I'm like, am I low barring it? Saying 12, and I was like, maybe it's 13. 4, I did not think 14.
12. I mean, I think I guessed 12. I either guessed 11, 12, something like that.
You figure there's a couple of years where they were just, they kind of stumbled into 7 and 9.
Come on.
Because to be in the top 10, you have to be really stinky. I can't emphasize that enough. Like, top 10 is really, really stanky. All right. Well, Jacksonville.
Hold on. Now I'm looking at Jacksonville's records by year. 10-6 was the year that they went to the AFC Championship game. So starting in 2008, 5 wins, 7 wins, 8 wins, 5 wins, 2 wins, 4 wins, 3 wins, 5 wins, 3 wins. Then you had a 10-win season, 5 wins, 6 wins, 1 win, 3 wins. Now they have 4 wins.
Can I read the picks from those years?
Sure. Of course you can.
So, of course, Trayvon Walker was the most recent one. Mm-hmm. Trevor Lawrence. Okay. Now we're only back to 2020. CJ Henderson.
Not great. No.
Josh Allen.
Good. That's a good pick.
Leonard Fournette, 4th overall. Jalen Ramsey.
Great
overall.
Pick. Great pick.
Didn't work out for them individually.
Well, I mean,
Dante Fowler.
I mean, it did, right? That pick did work out for them. Because Jalen became a shutdown.
No, I mean, the evaluation was right on. Jalen was a great player.
They were just too poor of a franchise, and when I say that, I didn't necessarily mean financially, but I guess now I mean financially. To bring him back, because I think the rest of the team just wasn't what it needed to be.
Here's where there's a run of just absolute bottomless pit. Mm-hmm. Dante Fowler, Blake Bortles, Luke Joeckel, Justin Blackmon, Blaine Gabbert.
Your 2 quarterbacks are Blaine Gabbert and Blake Bortles.
Man, it's pretty crazy. And then,
It's tough.
Yeah, so I don't have to keep going, but that's how you get there. So
woo!
You just get, those are the picks that not only can you not miss on, right? Like, you can't miss on top 10 picks. You just can't emphasize it enough, because every draft class, you should be able to find I don't know, 15 players that are worthy of going in that spot, that their floor is going to be a starter, their ceiling is going to be an all-pro. Well, yeah, something around there. So
that's realistic.
Right, that's fair.
You you're not going to hit. Just know, because the draft is what it is. You're not necessarily going to hit, but you've got to be able to pick guys that when they're misses, you're hoping they're misses, but they're still starters. You hope that they're not misses and they're busts, right? And I feel like there's just been some busts with the Jacksonville Jaguars, unfortunately, and how they've drafted.
Crazy.
And I do want to talk about Atlanta at number 10 now, because another loss this week. They're sitting here at 5-8. They're going into the bye week, so they've got the bye week coming up for week 14. Super late bye week. I kind of hate that. I think the players like it. I was listening to the Kelsey pod, and they were like,
really?
"Oh," he's like, "Well, when would you want to have your bye week?" And I think it was Jason Kelsey who was like, "Oh, like as late as possible. Like you want."
Because he's always used to winning.
Well, and
right?
you're beat up. You want a full 2 weeks off, whatever it is, before you go into the playoffs, because you'd love for guys to heal up, which that part of it definitely makes sense. Anyways, Atlanta picking number 10 overall right now. Are they going to be in the quarterback conversation? I think that is the big selling point for how you are discussing what kind of an impact the Falcons can have on this draft class, is if they're going to be in the quarterback market. You started Marcus Mariota the entire season. I'm very curious to see if they go to Desmond Ridder at any point. Desmond Ridder, third-round quarterback. Generally, you don't let a third-round quarterback the year before stop you from taking a quarterback if you got a top 10 pick and you got a QB need. That's just the truth.
Yep.
Last year's quarterback class, I think, was very interesting because there was a lot of different orders of how people had Matt Corral and Kenny Pickett and Desmond Ridder and Malik Willis and Sam Howell. But no matter where people had the order, it felt as though the quarterbacks were going to go a lot higher. Like you were convincing yourself, oh, is Malik Willis a first-round pick? Oh, is Kenny Pickett the first-round pick? Is Desmond Ridder a first-round pick? And I feel like for a handful of those guys, the answer was going to be yes. There was a lot of projections of them going in the first round. So I feel like it's hard for us to get it out of our head that the only one who was in the first round was Kenny Pickett. And there was a massive gap between these other players. In fact, like these teams that even drafted their quarterbacks later, Ridder, Willis, Corral, Howell, they all had picks prior to that. Well, I don't think Carolina did, but they had picks prior to that in which they could have selected those guys, and they ended up not doing that. So to me, that kind of tells you where they might value them. So for as much as I am still a little bit hesitant for what Atlanta might do in the quarterback market, if they end this season with any pick between 7 and 10, 7 and 11, something like that, I think they're going to seriously consider quarterback, even if they've barely seen anything, if anything, at a Desmond Ridder. What do you think about that?
I think you have to, right? Now, the good for Atlanta is that it's not like you're tied to a crazy quarterback contract, because Mariota can be cut. You can move, and the deal annual average
after that.
Yeah, I think $2.5 million is the dead money if they cut him after the season.
2.5. You got that, right? You got that, right?
Yeah, it's nothing. So, I mean, and probably not. No, probably not.
Probably not. You don't have that?
I was definitely don't have that.
Just messing.
Was going to say, is there a team out there that just trades like a 7th rounder for Mariota? But no. Anyway, so
no.
He's been that disappointing this year.
Mariota's cap hit does go up to 14.5 next year, by the way.
Oh, then no.
He is 4.25 on the cap this year, and he goes up to 14.5 next year. So he's gone. They're cutting him no matter what. Man, how have they not started?
But it kind of tells you what they think of Ridder, right? I'm sorry. I know people don't want to hear that. But
you're probably right. If they don't go to Ridder after the bye week, that's pretty telling to me. I think.
Yeah, they don't even think he can manage their huddle if they don't do that. Man. All right. Well, yes, they have to be thinking quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to stack up this class right now because it's very easy at the top with Bryce. Like Bryce in Houston, I don't want to say it's 100%, but it just seems very, very logical. Stroud will go somewhere in that top 12 with how many quarterback needy teams are. And if you're Atlanta and you like Stroud, can you just hope that happens? Levis will go.
Yeah.
I don't think we like Anthony Richardson, the idea of him. I don't think a team is going to risk it all with a top 15 pick on Anthony Richardson.
I would say that there's not a lot that has given us the evidence that that would be the case. Perhaps the draft process goes along and we learn a lot more about what teams think of Anthony Richardson. And maybe we learn that teams just love the potential, Like what we saw with Trayvon Walker last year, right? They just like the potential's crazy. You can't pass up on it. So maybe we get to that point with Richardson, but there's nothing that is telling me that Richardson's going to be a top 20 pick. Back into the first round, we'll get to that at the end of the podcast.
Which is better for him.
When we discuss Anthony Richardson, as well as the other guys that have already declared. Yes?
I think brings me to my next point. One of my favorite parts of this draft right now as it lines up is Seattle and Detroit at 3 and 4, not with their own picks. Seattle has Denver's pick. Detroit has the Rams pick. I know I was a little tough on Seattle on Sunday Night Show. In the short term of this year, their defense has a lot of question marks, as amazing as the offense has been. But this has been a dream year for Seattle in a sense where you got the answer at quarterback with Geno. And with Detroit, Goff has shown that in this system with his talent, he's enough to get you to the next guy down the road. I don't think Anthony Richardson obviously would be considered at either of these spots, but it brings me to Detroit picking at 15, having a top 5 pick where they're going to get a premium talent that's going to play right away. They're actually a team at 15 that you'd love to trade back and do this, but even at 15 or wherever they end up, because I actually think they're going to win quite a few more games with the way they're playing right now.
You say the Lions?
Yeah.
Do you see the Lions are favored against Minnesota this week?
It moved. I know they were underdogs by 1 when it opened.
I think they're favored by 1 now.
That is so disrespectful to Minnesota. And I would still take the Lions.
10 and 2.
I would still take the Lions.
Oh,
I think Detroit is the dream spot for a guy like Richardson. He doesn't have to play for 2 years.
Yeah. Look, I'll say this too. We haven't gone over our final regular season film evaluation. But I wonder if CJ Stroud's not a possibility at 15 as well, because I was just looking at some of Stroud's numbers. Stroud has a 38 passing grade under pressure. He has been under pressure. He is ranked 133rd in the FBS when it comes to quarterbacks under pressure. 133rd. He has been downright terrible this year. He's got 3 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays under pressure. Where's the adjusted completion percentage? Adjusted completion percentage of 46% under pressure. He's been awful. Last year, I think there were question marks about what he was under pressure. And last year, he had a 67.2 grade under pressure. So this is so much worse. When he's not pressured, the grade goes from 38 all the way to 87.7. There's no quarterback in the country that has a bigger contrasted number between how they play when they're not pressured and when they're clean versus when things go wrong. And that's not good. That's not good for Stroud's evaluation. That's a red
flag.
Because especially, he's not a mobile quarterback. He's not a creator. It, like Dane was saying on the episode where we had him on last Thursday, the league looks for not just passers, but creators. And Stroud has absolutely failed that test, I think, so far this season. He gets to play Georgia. And where I don't think Ohio State is going to win that game, I don't know how many people are giving Ohio State a chance to win that game. That semifinal all of a sudden becomes monumental for CJ Stroud, because I think a lot of people who, whether they're super into the draft or whether they're casually into the draft, they have heard the concerns about Stroud. But I'm not sure a lot of people have watched a ton of Ohio State this year, because Ohio State was always going to destroy a soft schedule and be on a collision course in Michigan. So this is going to be the most watched and most, I'll say, rooted public opinion that people are going to have of CJ Stroud. And that Georgia defense is really good. And if he crumbles against this Georgia defense, I'm not saying struggles. Everybody struggles against the Georgia defense. Like, it's a really good defense. I'm not saying that like it's a slight. But if he crumbles, like if CJ Stroud looks genuinely bad in the college football playoff, I'm telling you, it's going to continue to push the narratives where we're already seeing, okay, not really a debate between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud anymore. All right, maybe CJ Stroud's just going to be, like a top 3 pick or something. Maybe he's going to be a top 5 pick. Then Dane tells us that maybe there's a lot of teams in the league that don't love CJ Stroud. I genuinely believe that CJ Stroud could get picked in the teens in this draft.
I think so too.
That's what I'm starting to think.
No, I think you're right on it. I think all the signs are there that Stroud is a guy that gets picked apart in the process. And
I would agree with that as well.
Because of what you said, how staggering that is, man, it's going to be fascinating to weigh it, right? Because Levis has a ton of problems on his own. And I feel like we're going to get to the point where people are going to try to, pick apart Stroud while also defending Levis. And I think that's a really dicey area because I think you could just say they both have their flaws right now. I personally like Stroud better than Levis still, but I have fully embraced, going back to summer compared to now, that Bryce Young is in his own tier in this quarterback class.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, it might not be close. It might not be tier 1 and 2. It might be Bryce Young in tier 1. I don't know if we have a genuine tier 2. And then tier 3 could be, Stroud. And then even for me, I think tier 4 would be Levis and Richardson. But I think it just goes to further emphasize the point of he's not a lock to be a top 5 pick like we had thought for so long.
No, all of a sudden, these mock drafts that were kind of tricky early on because there's a lot of teams that would need a quarterback or would like a quarterback. And, often it was Bryce Young at the very top, CJ Stroud right after him, either at pick number 2 or pick number 3. I think we're going to start to see a lot more simulations where the range for CJ Stroud is pretty vast. And I do think that this, as much as it is unfair when it comes to the public perception of things, which we'll obviously try to weed through as much as we can for you guys, because that's what we want to do. We want to be a mediator if we can. It's going to mean a lot. If Stroud crumbles against Georgia and looks absolutely terrible under pressure, that's going to be his narrative. And like you said, he's going to get picked apart throughout the entire process. People are going to continue to point out how he can't be a creator outside of pressure. And if that's the case, man, if you've got a quarterback who you like the tools, you like the height, you like the build, you like the arm talent, you like the mechanics, you like all that, but if they cannot operate under pressure and outside of structure, how high do you take that quarterback?
You just described Jared Goff.
Jared Goff went number 1 overall, so I guess maybe you can convince yourself of him going high, but
yes, but I do think the league has evolved from there. That was a long time ago in terms of drafts.
We are old. That's true.
I think we like Jared Goff more than the general public likes Jared Goff, but how high do you and I'm not saying Stroud, I'm comping him to Goff, but I'm saying the way you drew it up, and I do agree with your evaluation, how high do you take a player like that? I don't actually know the answer right now. I'm actually fascinated to really come to that conclusion.
I think it's 2016 NFL draft. I'm trying to make sure that I remember the list of the quarterbacks because I want to see who I had ranked. Oh, this is a beauty. Okay, I'm going to try to remember what my quarterback rankings were for 2016.
I don't know if I'll be able to find mine.
I don't have mine in front of me, so I don't know if this was final or not, but just from looking at the list, I'm pretty sure I had Connor Cook as my QB1 in that class, which good job, Trev. I think I had Carson Wentz 2. I had Cardale Jones 3. I had Jared Goff 4. And I had Paxton Lynch 5. I think I had Prescott 6. I either had Prescott 6 or 5.
I found mine.
Okay, what is it? What is
on
it?
Jets Wire.
Oh, hell yeah, baby.
Can you rip through yours one more time a little quicker? I did hear, but I missed 3 and 4.
I believe I had Connor Cook as QB1.
Okay,
I either had him as QB1 till the end, or I had him for QB1 for a decent amount of the process. So Connor Cook was QB1, Carson Wentz was 2, Cardale Jones was 3.
My God, I forgot about Cardale.
12 gauge, baby.
Oh my God.
Jared Goff was 4. I think Dak Prescott was 5 and Paxton Lynch was 6, but those might have been flipped.
All right, here's mine. There's a doozy in here. Number 1 for me was Jared Goff.
Okay, you like Goff at 1. Okay.
I did like Goff. Number 2 for me was Carson Wentz. So pretty chalk. They went 1 and 2. I had him 1 and 2.
Yeah.
3, I had Paxton Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
4, the most egregious one, the worst one. This is your Connor Cook for me. Christian Hackenberg at 4. Horrific.
Jets great
Horrific.
though. Jets
Horrific.
great.
And then the Jets took him. And just because I had him in the top 5 did not mean I thought they should take him on day 2 of the draft.
I had Christian Hackenberg as like QB 15 in that class. I was so far out on that dude for so long.
And then 5, my saving grace, Dak Prescott, like you.
Nice.
I had him at 5. That was, I believe, my first Senior Bowl or second Senior Bowl, and I really liked Dak. That was actually what got Dak into my top 5. I really liked him at that Senior Bowl. So, I mean, it's evaluating quarterbacks is a roller coaster, as people listening could tell from our 2 evaluations. And that was I wasn't even on the BR desk on day 2 or 3 then. So this was me just kind of almost blogging. It's funny to look back at these, man.
As a young draft lad.
As a young draft lad. Talk about, I don't even know it, like, I don't even really have a take from this list.
A lot of people have asked me, I'm sure a lot of people have asked you as well, like things that you have learned over the years through scouting.
That's the better conversation than, hey, what were you wrong on, dumbass?
Right. Well, we were wrong about this for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you were a lot closer to right than I was in this class, but I will say this class taught me the importance of an overall body of work for quarterbacks, not just some of the high throws. And also it taught me to not emphasize the touch passes nearly as much. I am a sucker for touch passes. I
was too.
I still a little bit feel that way, where it's just like that stuff that you can't really teach. Like I see Bryce Young do a lot of that stuff. And that's
that was Rosen for me.
Right. And it's just, there are so many quarterbacks who just have a great feel for it. Touch passes are exactly that. They're feel. And some guys have it, some guys don't. And I feel like the better you are at touch passes, the less robotic you are, the more natural the game comes to you. I emphasize that way too much. It is still an important trait, and I still have it as an important trait that I take into my quarterback evaluations. But I emphasize that way too much that season. And that's how Connor Cook ended up being my QB1, is because there was no quarterback in that class that threw those beautiful over the shoulders, running straight underneath it, right into the breadbasket touch passes like Connor Cook had. The problem was the rest of it was bad. The arm talent was mid. He was missing guys left and right. He just didn't have a rocket of an arm, and he just made boneheaded decisions. But I didn't weigh things the right way in that class. The same for Cardale Jones, right? Cardale Jones comes at number 3 for me. And I just felt like this is a physically gifted runner and passer who clearly was so physically gifted that he comes in relief of JT Barrett, I believe, right, when he got hurt, and just catapults Ohio State's offense to an untouchable level that season. And I said, that is rare talent. And in reality, I did not weigh enough the consistency that you have to have with that rare talent and being able to take that outside of the Ohio State system, which was very, very talented, as we've seen so many players come from that specific draft class from Ohio State. So yeah, that's just a little, I didn't love what Jared Goff was like out of structure. I didn't really like that. Carson Wentz, I liked, obviously, and I think that Carson Wentz is a really talented quarterback. We saw that during his MVP caliber season with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that Carson just has decision-making issues now. I just think that he's got confidence issues in how he sees the field, and he's just pulling the trigger in the wrong spot. So that also happens with guys. They're very human, and that's kind of stuff that happens after draft night. So people tend to ask me a lot about that, and so I saw that as an opportunity to answer one of those questions there. So yeah, that's kind of what I learned from 2016.
I love it. And to piggyback off that, I'm reading my write-ups here that are short, but I would have, if I wrote the same exact thing today that I wrote for Hackenberg at 4 and Dak at 5, I would not rank them this way, just because of, like you said, what you value versus what you don't, or what you overvalue versus what you don't.
Right.
I mean, on Hackenberg, I wrote, here's a little part of it. The bottom line is he's got a huge arm with a great build, but a lot of major red flags on the field. He struggled to convert on third downs and fails to handle any kind of pressure, displays little pocket presence. His accuracy can be spotty, but his arm talent makes him a project worth taking on late day 2. Now here's Dak. I'll go down a little bit. He has the tools to eventually find his way on the field at the next level. Dak's mobility, football IQ, and ability to command a huddle will go a long ways in the NFL. If a team can give him 2 years on the sideline, he could develop into a signal caller that knows how to take care of the ball, along with playmaking ability outside of the pocket. Those things I like so much more than any of the garbage I wrote about Christian Hackenberg. Like, this isn't even it's crazy what you fall for, especially when you're learning in this business. And we will learn a lot more along the way, but it's wild reading those things and being like, what? Like, why?
It's crazy how you wrote those two things and yet had
ranked them separately.
The prior above the former.
Nuts. It's a great
the latter.
It's great to look back at what you've done and how you would do it differently now.
That was fun. I enjoyed it.
It really is, man. It really. Good.
I still look.
We didn't plan to do that, but I'm so glad we did, because I think being so transparent about our process and how it's changed or how it's grown is one of the cooler things about our show, because you and I have been doing this on a very similar timeline.
Yep. And we didn't coach either. Like we're not coming from like a coaching tree. We're truly coming from we're constantly trying to learn as much as we can about the complexities and the details and everything about the game that goes into these projections in the NFL draft game. And we've been doing that for handful of years now, and we'll continue to do so. And this makes it a lot of fun, man. It makes it a lot of fun looking back and understanding what you've learned, kind of how far you've come as an analyst, and just makes you excited for the upcoming process, right? I'm super excited to get to dive into these guys with some things that I've learned over the summer and over the season too. So, all right, let's round out the non-playoff teams with this order before we kind of get into some guys who have declared for the draft already. We got the Green Bay Packers. Big win this past weekend, 5-8 now. They're sitting there at number 11. Las Vegas Raiders, speaking of big wins, 3 in a row for the Raiders. 3 weeks ago, Connor, this team was picking in the top 3. Now Vegas is sitting here at number 12. Houston's got number 13 overall, thanks to Cleveland. Pittsburgh's at 14. Detroit's at 15, as you mentioned. Chargers 16. New England Patriots 17. And then the Washington Commanders sitting there at 18. But they're right on that line with the New York Giants. They're only 1 game behind them. So perhaps they might not end up at number 18 when it's all said and done. What do you think about 11 through 18? Anybody really stand out to you? Anybody you're intrigued to see how they approach the draft this year?
Probably Vegas, but I think with how they've started to turn the corner a little bit, maybe they do try to roll a car for another year. I know our listeners have pointed out that he has a no trade clause in that, but just to be transparent to people why we kept saying it, there was a while where I thought Derek Carr getting a fresh start might be good for him as well, not just for the Raiders. So no move clause or not. So the Raiders at 12, I think ultimately it's going to trend where everybody's back and the Raiders just try to get the best player available in that spot, which I have no problem with at all. And we'll see if they can, retain a guy like Josh Jacobs. But I think that pick can be utilized to get stronger on the trenches on one side of the ball. I constantly, though, look back to what Detroit could do at 15, and I'm just enamored at the different options they have to make this football team better, especially when they have that other pick in the top 5.
I'm fascinated to see what the Chargers do. I am fascinated.
And who the coach will be.
Well, and of course, who the coach might be. I still think it's going to be Staley.
I think so too, but man,
still think it's going to be Staley.
Injuries or not, how disappointing would it be if they don't make the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, you had people talk about the Chargers as a potential Super Bowl team. For them to not make the playoffs, I mean, that would be bad. There's no doubt about it. And it's just football, which is right here on this channel. If you guys don't watch, 11 a.m. Mike Renner broke down a play on Tuesday's show. He broke down actually a couple of plays of the Chargers offense, their third down offense, especially down the stretch in the fourth quarter, and the designs of it really, and just how the lack of speed option, legitimate deep threat down the field, legitimate speed to worry about on the team is really hurting their, I'll say, overall efficiency when it comes to play design and scheming guys open and being constantly a threat, whatever. They need a speed player. And I remember last year, well, that's where my mind goes to. And I don't think Jalen Hyatt's going to get drafted 16 overall unless his straight line athleticism numbers are just out of this world. But, if you're the Chargers, that's the kind of player you need. You either need him or you need like a monster run stuffer in the middle.
That they do.
So I think that's probably what they're going for. But I said those same things last year too, and they went O-line, and I don't hate the Zion Johnson pick. Zion Johnson's a good football player, and he's going to continue to be a good football player. They needed help along the offensive line, and so I definitely couldn't hate on that pick. But that being said, the issues that they had going into the draft last year still exist. I would have told you they had 3 major areas that they needed to address in the draft outside of the free agency additions that they had, and they were offensive line, interior defensive line to help stop the run, and speed at wide receiver. They drafted offensive line and got a good impact out of it. The other 2 needs are still glaring for this team. So can they address one or more of those with their draft picks this year? I think they're going to need to have a really good draft strategy to kind of figure that out. But they definitely need some speed at wide receiver, man. They really do. And I don't know if it's I don't know if it's going to be a great class to get any speed outside of Jalen Hyatt. I don't know if it looks like it right now, so we'll have to see. But that's it. The Chargers are an interesting point for me.
They have a lot of work to do with the cap. I'm looking at their 2023 cap, and they're in the red by $7 million, which when we say in the red, that means they're $7 million over the cap. But if you take away the cap argument and they found a way to navigate this, Trevor, the perfect player for them to sign is Darius Slayton. Perfect player.
Yeah, Darius Slayton would be great for this team. Love that call out.
And if you're Darius Slayton, I'd be loving that idea. Play with Justin Herbert.
Play with Justin Herbert. Joe Lombardi's probably out of there. I gotta think he's out of there.
So if I'm the Chargers, I either try to solve the run stuffer or wide receiver in free agency, depending what I can do with my cap.
Mm-hmm.
It's tricky. Very tricky.
Keenan Allen's contract gets at least cuttable next year. I mean, he goes up on the cap. I think he goes up to $21 million against the cap next year. He'll be 31 years old. And what's the let me see. What is this? No, this is Marcus Mariota. Keenan Allen. I think it was like 4 or 6 million.
The JC Jackson one is tough for them right now.
Tough. 6. So it's 6.9 million of dead cap, but he's on the cap for 21.7 next year.
Okay.
So this is the first year that they can really move on from him. The year after that, they can save a lot of money.
Man, when you look at this, they might not have a choice when you look at their salary cap situation.
Maybe.
We always talk about how the wide receiver free agency class looks terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Might get some guys Allen on it.
Yeah, there might be some guys who get cut. We'll have to see about that. But I think there's always some big wide receiver movement, no matter what. All right, let's get into some of these guys who have already declared for the draft. Some of them that haven't. But actually, before we get to that list, got to ask you guys a question out there. We all saw Monday Night Football. We all saw the comeback, and it was vintage Tom Brady. Well, what if you could have invested in Tom Brady's individual stock before he did all of that, before his very first comeback? You could have done that as a rookie. If you would have done that, then your investment would be worth over 4,000% today. Now it's not a question of what if. Now it's a who's next. Mojo is the all-new sports book market that lets you invest in your favorite athletes and cash in on your passion. Sign up right now on the Apple Store to get your free stock worth up to tens of thousands of dollars if you can hit it big, like we did with Tom Brady there. Over 300 players are listed on Mojo, so you can invest in rookies like Chris Olave and Drake London, comeback candidates like Saquon Barkley, Geno Smith, superstars like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. You can invest in anybody. Go long and make money when an underrated diamond in the rough really breaks out, which you could probably get in on early with this here draft podcast, or you can even short sell an overrated rival if you think they're about to flop. Prices move with every play, every game, and every headline, so you can buy and sell instantly anytime all year long, so that action never stops. Mojo is live in New Jersey right now, so download Mojo in the Apple App Store today and start turning your playmakers into moneymakers. You must be 21 years or older to use Mojo and located in New Jersey to make trades. If you have a gambling problem, help is available at 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit mojo.com for more info. All right, Connor, I'll just read some of the list of notable players who have declared for the 2023 NFL Draft, and I'll let you start wherever you want to, my friend. We got Anthony Richardson, quarterback from Florida, Gervin Dexter, the defensive tackle from Florida, Osiris Torrance, the interior offensive lineman from Florida, Jackson Smith-Njigba, the wide receiver from Ohio State, officially into the draft pool. Unfortunately, didn't play a lot this year. Christian Gonzalez, the corner from Oregon. Cam Smith, the corner from South Carolina. Joey Porter, the corner from Penn State. Will Levis, the quarterback from Kentucky, MJ Anderson, the defensive lineman from Iowa State, Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle for Oklahoma in the pool, and Drew Sanders, the linebacker from Arkansas. Those are some of the notable names that I found who have declared over the last week. What do you think about this list? And is there a name that really pops out to you that you want to talk about here?
Ooh, well, what I think about the list is Anthony Richardson's the wild card of it all, right? He can go anywhere from being a top 10 pick to outside of the first 2 rounds, depending how this process goes for him. And when you have a quarterback like that, that's polarizing. That's, obviously exciting and also terrifying for the process and really, really intriguing. I look at some of the guys that, might not have been household names over summer, but now declared. Christian Gonzalez and Joey Porter, they'll go in the first round. Osiris Torrance, I think, is worthy of a first-round pick. Levis is going to go early. Harrison was a guy that you really liked over the summer, and I thought he had a tremendous year. I really, really did. He took growth steps for that Oklahoma team that were huge for him. And Drew Sanders, the former 5-star that transferred from Alabama to Arkansas, has just been a machine in the middle of the field this year. So I'm not particularly surprised by any of these decisions, to be honest with you. And I think for the most part, the one that people are talking about as this big faller is Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Yeah.
I still really, really like him. Maybe thinking he'd go top 15 over the summer was too high. But Jackson Smith-Njigba, to me, is still going to be a really nice NFL wide receiver that's warrants going in that pick 28 to 40 kind of range.
28 to 40. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's
Although,
a lot.
I say that with a medical caveat
fair.
because what happened this year is...
I mean, we were told it was a hamstring injury, right? We were just told it was a hamstring injury that he was just never able to recover from.
But is it like a long-term soft tissue?
I guess I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like I remember that was a big thing with Marshawn Lattimore that year, and Marshawn turned into an incredible NFL corner. But it is something that people look at and they're like, oh, the percentage of this being a reoccurring theme. Kadarius Toney has a hamstring injury every 2.5 hours. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen to Jackson Smith-Njigba, but I think that's my variable of why he wouldn't go in the top 40 picks.
Yeah, I was skeptical about Jackson Smith-Njigba even like going into the year. Now, there weren't a lot of other wide receivers that I thought were so talented I could easily put over him. So that's why he was still pretty high on my rankings when we went into the season. But when I looked at him, like, hey, he's a very shifty, he's a smart slot wide receiver, understands the two-way go leverage, knows how to get in between zones. Like, that's all really good for him. He had a 300-yard game just because of his football IQ, it felt like, where he was able to get in the areas of the defense where they were not. But how much of an athlete is he? Even outside of the injury, I had questions about how much of an athlete he really was. So this is a good player. And I think that Jackson Smith-Njigba is a good player. But the top 10 talk was just always really rich to me. The top 20 talk, I was like, okay, I mean, I know the league's going to want to draft playmakers at pass catching positions, so I guess I could get it. But I feel like I have always been most comfortable with him being a back end of the first round, early second round kind of a player. And for the kind of athlete that I think he is, to me, that feels like it's an early day 2 guy. Now, we'll see what he's able to run, if he's able to run when it comes to Indianapolis and pro day and all that kinds of stuff. But that's what I saw on tape when I watched him this summer. This is a good receiver, but how high is the ceiling, really? How high is the ceiling, and what does he bring to the table that is irreplicable? Right? Because that's what first round picks are all about. You're trying to pick guys that have rare traits that you can't get anywhere. You can't get in free agency every year, or you can't get at other portions of the draft, or it's hard to develop, or maybe it's impossible to develop when it comes to God-given ability. So that is how I look at first round picks, and the value that you need to place on him is, what does this guy do that it feels like very few other people can do? Jackson Smith-Njigba was a super smart receiver, but in a receiver class that's full of slot guys, how much does that really stand out? So disappointing we did not get to see him this year. I'm not going to lie. I don't think that he's going to be that top 20 pick anymore.
It's funny, as we look at this season, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson have been the best rookie wide receivers, both coming out of Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Garrett Wilson specifically saying that he thought Jackson Smith-Njigba was the best wide receiver he's ever seen. So, and I'm pretty sure they had to sit down with all three of them, and both Olave and Garrett Wilson pointed at, like they said he was actually the best out of all of them. And I'm not saying that how much that matters or anything, but those two guys were so good at Ohio State, are already so good in the NFL, and very confident guys. And they looked at Jackson Smith-Njigba like, this dude is better than us. It's kind of fascinating.
What was Victor Cruz's mock draftable? What was his?
Ooh.
You know, because
Victor had to run really well, right?
Victor ran.
And it probably has to be UMass Pro Day.
Oh, yeah, it's a pro day.
Because he was not a combine guy.
4.47.
That shocks me.
He's 5'11", 205. Ran a 4.47. Broad jump 10 feet. Short shuttle 4.17.
He did Boston College's pro day. I guess UMass didn't even have one for him.
Vert 41 and a half inches.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
3 cone sub 7. 6.96. Did you say that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Victor was.
What's Jackson Smith-Njigba's height weight? What's Ohio State got him listed at? 6'1",
6 foot. He's 6 feet tall.
Yeah, he's probably 6 feet.
He's probably almost the same exact size as Victor Cruz.
Yeah, I just don't think he's as explosive.
No, I don't think so either. Do we think he's going to... we'll see.
Well, I just thought about when I thought about Victor Cruz, I'm thinking in my head, I was like, okay, who is a super smart, like shifty receiver who just always seemed to be open, like Victor Cruz. But I think that Victor Cruz is even more explosive. He had a lot of yards.
Shot out of it.
He had a lot of yards after catch.
Out of a cannon.
Yeah. So
crazy.
What do we think of Osiris Torrance? Do you think he's a first rounder?
Yep, absolutely. First round guard. Will fight the good fight. The man's got that bear grip strength. He's great. He was great. He was great before he got to Florida. That was a great guy for Napier to bring with him. He's been reliable in pass pro this year. He's an absolute tank in the run game. He's going to the Senior Bowl. I think Torrance is absolutely a first rounder. Maybe not top 15 or 20, but if you're looking to beef up the back end of your offensive line and you're sitting at the end of round 1, let's pull up the tank. I'll pull up Tankathon again. Just look at some of the teams that could be thinking about him. I mean, across the board, all of these teams, quite frankly.
Good exercise here, actually.
At Minnesota could use him.
Minnesota.
The Giants, the Jets, the Titans, the Dolphins. Oh, the Dolphins forfeited their pick. Sorry.
Giants. That's a good one. Kind of like that one.
Yeah. They got their stop gaps for this year, but they know interior needs to be upgraded over time.
That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying.
Dallas will always look O-line.
Could go interior offensive line again in round 1.
Yeah, but they'll take a player that, we have in round 3, and he'll either be in the league.
They'll take the Shepherd quarterback.
They will take the Shepherd quarterback. I would like to declare that right now. Great call, Trevor.
We got
Tyson Bagent? I don't know.
Bagent?
Sorry.
Bagent?
It's spelled like Bagent, but Dane had a little like twist on it, and Dane would know because Dane.
100%. Yeah.
Dane would know because he's been covering him closely. He will be a New England Patriot. We'll have the Bailey Zappi Tyson Bagent quarterback competition for next year.
Somehow Mike Renner got his hands on Shepherd film because of course he did. And we were watching a little bit of Tyson and don't love his arm.
But,
so,
okay, I was going to say, I want to hear this.
I just don't. Now, we only watched, I think I was only able to kind of like sit around for a second. So we were watching like the first half of one of the games. So it wasn't, I'm not going to sit here and say like it was a full film study or anything like that.
You get an instant feel, especially with smaller school guys.
The arm was not impressive to me. So I'm a little bit worried. If it's not popping off the screen at Shepherd, what's going to
look like in Mobile?
He's just got to be an assassin.
Accurately. Like when we're just getting pissed on in rain and wind in Mobile, you know it's coming. It happens every year.
I was wondering where you were going with that, but
yeah, be careful clipping that out.
No, he is. So I'm very intrigued to see what he does at the Senior Bowl because of the limited tape that I was able to watch of him, I was like, does he have the arm? So maybe he will in Mobile. We'll see. The three corners, Christian Gonzalez, Cam Smith, Joey Porter Jr. You think they're all first rounders?
I'm still working on Cam, who I really liked over the summer. Porter and Gonzalez, yeah. And I've really done a 180 on Gonzalez. Watched him in September, and I was like, the traits are unreal, the size and speed. He's going to run in the 4.3s. He's just not finding the ball as much as you'd like around one corner. And I think he's been phenomenal the last 3 quarters of the season. Cam Smith, going back to summer, he just had that man-to-man mentality as a corner that I really, really liked. That he, no coincidence, he probably got that from J.C. Horn.
Of course.
I had him as my second corner coming out of summer, only behind Keely Ringo. I wouldn't be shocked if Cam goes at the end of round 1.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think there's a lot of hype for these guys. So I'm excited to get to sit down and really take a look at how this past season has been for them. 2 notable players that I think went back to school. Michael Penix Jr., your boy, quarterback for Washington, who ends up going back to school, which I'm shocked at, but we can talk about that in a sec. And then the other player is Kayshon Boutte, the LSU wide receiver. Now, I'm not
good move for him.
I'm not as shocked about that one because I'm going to be honest. There were people who had Kayshon Boutte as wide receiver 1 going into the season. And when you're wide receiver 1 in a draft class, you've probably got the potential to go top 15, or at least you're going to start seeing your name in the top 15 of really early mock drafts. I bet you Kayshon Boutte would have got drafted in the 3rd round if he came out of the draft this year. I bet he would have gone in the 3rd round. I think this year has been
that's off testing, not off anything he did.
I think this year has been that disappointing, unfortunately, for him. And some things probably in and out of his control, but ultimately, I agree with you. I think it was a good move for Kayshon Boutte to go back. He needs to remind people of what he can be as a wide receiver because I don't think his draft stock, draft status, draft position, when it was all said and done, was going to reflect that in this class.
With you all the way. Boutte, a good move for him. The one that, with Penix, I mean, number one, incredible year for him with that Washington program. Threw for almost 4,400 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 picks. He made throws every week that were remarkable, jaw-dropping throws. The thing that I don't get with him, and this is an assumption, right? If he had the proper all-star invites in his hands, and this is an assumption, do we think he would go back? Because he's a guy with his raw talent would rip it up at Senior Bowl or Shrine Game. I mean, he would. You want to talk about like how Tyson Bagent might not look the part with that arm talent, or it's a question going in. Penix is the opposite, where you're going to look and like, who the hell is this throwing on the practice field?
Right.
So, great for Washington. He's got the injury history that I'm sure teams were very keen on. If we want to have this Bo Nix revitalized conversation, Bo Nix wasn't even the best quarterback in the pack. Not even close. So it's just weird to me. I don't know. I'm rooting for Penix to ball out next year and be a big-time prospect because I thought he was slept on all year as a prospect, and I didn't think he needed to go back to school, but him going back to school gives me the answer from what everyone else thought.
I would have loved to see him go to the NFL just given his injury history.
Yeah, now you got to risk another college year.
I don't want something to happen again. And it was a great year for him. But
dude, he was awesome.
Maybe I agree. Maybe from what he heard from the NFL, it was like, look, man, they just don't trust your injury history. And if they don't trust his injury history now, unfortunately, it's not going to be any better probably a year from now. Maybe it will if you got 2 years and you're fully healthy. But it's a bummer. It's a bummer that I think that that's probably what he heard back is that the NFL just like, hey, man, you're going to get to the combine and you're just going to be a medical red flag. And Lord knows where you're going to get drafted after that. And maybe Michael Penix is sitting here thinking, you know what? That's the case. Let me play another year of college football. Let me be a starting quarterback for another year. see if I can string together another healthy season, see if I can come out the other side with a little bit more trust in his body. And that's really from the NFL, maybe even not from himself, but maybe he just wants to continue to be a starting quarterback. And there's no guarantee that that's going to be the case in the NFL if he were to leave this year. So if that's the case, man, go out and have fun, continue to get to play football, continue to be a starter. I think he's really talented.
Think of it like this, Trevor. I'm looking at the round 5 contracts from last year.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Penix had the option of going back to school, a school that just won, 10 games. He's going to be on the Heisman preseason list, all that stuff. I don't know what the NIL was, but the significant NIL deal to stay at Washington. Because if Penix went back to the portal again, he'd be one of the hottest quarterbacks in the portal.
Right.
I mean, maybe
there's so many quarterbacks in the portal.
So many quarterbacks in the portal. He'd be one of the hottest quarterbacks in the portal. So say you get the NIL deal, really, really nice money, whatever it is, to improve your stock. Let's say he was a late 5th round pick. Last year, a late 5th round pick, let's go with pick 172. The total value of a contract was around $3.9 million, with the signing bonus under $300,000.
Mm.
This is kind of me pulling the curtain of like what guys like that are dealing with. Like, hey, man, you might be undrafted on your medicals. You might be taken in the late 5th round, or you can get paid more to come back to school.
Yeah,
that's the world we're in right now.
Sure.
So
100%. No, that's something that you got to consider when you're going through these lists in December. There's no doubt. Transfer portal guys. I had 3 guys on here that I just wrote down. There's over 1,000 names in the transfer portal right now.
The stock exchange could sign a quarterback in the transfer portal. That's how many names there are.
And we will. And
we will have a quarterback of the show.
DJ Uyunglele obviously is the big one. He's in the transfer portal. Devin Leary, I was a little shocked about this one. He is in the transfer portal, NC State quarterback. I know a lot of people were fans of his going into the season. He got hurt near the end of the year, so he didn't get to finish out the year with NC State. Now he's transferring. He's a guy who's been around for a while. He's dealt with some injury, but I do think that there's a lot of people who like his game. The other one that I would point out, and the one that is very interesting to me, is Jaheim Bell, the utility player / tight end / whatever you want to call him from South Carolina. Connor, I'm very shocked that Bell is transferring, I would say. Like, if he were to leave South Carolina, I would have thought he would have entered the draft, but maybe he heard back from the NFL and they just don't trust him as a tight end right now. They think he's too big of a, for lack of a better word, like a homeless player, just doesn't have that home base position because he does so many things for South Carolina's offense. He's played wide receiver, he's played tight end, he's played out of the backfield, like all this different stuff. I'm looking up his numbers in Ultimate right now. He has less than half the receiving yards he did last year, half the yards after catch he did last year, only 24 catches compared to 31 catches the year before, only 2 touchdowns compared to 5 touchdowns the year before. And his threat rate is down from 29.8% in 2021 to just 20.4% this past year. They didn't use him.
They just
didn't use him. And Antoine Wells is the wide receiver there who was unbelievable for them down the stretch. I understand why you got to feed that guy the ball because he just continued to deliver for you. But I was always a little confused by the lack of touches that Jaheim Bell got. I'm interested to see where he lands. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is a college football podcast and I'm going to predict what team he's going to go to. I have no clue with these guys. This is just an interesting, hey, these guys were on the draft radar. Now, not only are they not declaring, they're moving spots. So this is just getting all that info on you guys' radar too.
Yeah, he was a top tight end not the top tight end because there was a lot of good
3 or 4 for us.
Yeah, right around there.
3 or 4.
I mean, did a full write-up of him over summer. I know he has the ACL injury that ended his senior year of high school, and then he had a torn meniscus before his freshman season began there. So you always wonder, is the school concerned about the usage, what they can and can't do, or did they just not use him right? He's a very unique player, and hey, he's a guy that we could be talking about in next year's draft once again. This is, Jonnu Smith. This is a new age, Delaney Walker-ish kind of guy. Not that level of player, but just how unique. Or this is going to continue that a school just can't figure out how to use a player like that.
Hope not. I hope it's the...
Yeah, I watching him over summer, he was a very fun player.
I know. I think he's really
Hand him the
talented.
ball, could throw him screens,
I
get him
know.
blocking on the move.
I know. Interested to see where he lands. All right,
Time
there
to
we go.
play a tiny violin as I delete these guys out of the 2023 doc.
And Connor texted me this morning. He's like, I just went through a
It's a
deleting
massacre
spree
in
in the
here.
blog.
It's like, dude, it's a massacre in here.
Just because all the guys that are no longer going to
The
officially be in the
portal.
class.
The portal's insane.
It is. It's
insane
wild.
because normally you'd have all these quarterbacks we're talking about that are just like, they could be a 7th round guy, and you got to watch them. But no, now they play for 8 schools.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Whatever.
They're the Josh Johnsons of college football.
Yes, all of them.
All of them.
JT Daniels is definitely that.
Yeah, JT, I saw is transferring again. So JT went from USC to Georgia to West Virginia, and now he's transferring again.
What would our lives be like if we went to college 4 times?
Well, I mean,
I guess at some point you're really just an adult at college playing football.
I mean, we'd obviously have our pick of school, being that we're 6'5", 240, less than 10% body fat.
Number one and 1B in the transfer portal.
Yeah. Just like, off of genetics alone. I guess there's probably a point to where like you're not going to college football anymore. Like, or you're not going to college. Like, I don't think JT Daniels isn't going to college anymore. He simply has an apartment in the city in which he is playing college football and probably takes like online classes.
Yeah, like full University of Phoenix.
Yeah,
style,
right. Like he's not getting he's not a student.
No, he's getting like his 3rd online degree. He's just making up majors at this point.
Yeah, how did this must be a nightmare for guidance counselors everywhere. Guidance counselors and admission counselors across the country are in shambles.
Imagine being JT Daniels' 5th advisor. And he sits down and you're like, all right, JT, what are you interested in? He's like, well, I'm here to play football. And you're like, okay, but you need to like go to school. And he's like, yeah, like, all right, what have you studied? And he just lists like all the generic, electives. And then he's maybe got a degree in business or he's got a degree in, I don't know.
Wasn't it reported that like Matt Leinart took ballroom dancing his final year at USC?
I bet they
and like
do.
that was it. Like, but like that was the only.
What's the most ridiculous class you ever took in college just to hit a credit requirement? Like it has zero impact on your life.
Well, I had to take a class that was in a pool that would have counted as an elective towards my degree. And it was
exactly.
I believe the class was called Intro to the Universe. And it was like an astrology class of like.
I took space.
Yeah,
I took Intro to Space.
It was basically it, but I think mine was
wicked,
called Intro to the Universe. No, it was sick. I just don't think I have a class that would have been like weird, like college version of home ec or something. Like I didn't have that. I don't know.
I in college took Intro to Religion 101.
Oh, I didn't need to do that. I went to a private Christian school for the first 3 years of my education, so I had 3 years worth of that bad boy in my transfer scripts.
The only reason I took it is because it was the easiest class I could find on Rate My Professors, and I realized I made the right choice when I sat in the lecture hall and every single team was sitting around me, every single sport. And not calling athletes dumb or anything, but it's the fact that you want to set them up for
they have to be strategic with their time.
100%. I could not imagine being a D1 college athlete actually focusing on school and sports. So when you have the opportunity to pick your filler classes that don't have anything to do with your major, which is what I'm discussing, which is what I caught on to eventually in college and why I sat in this class, I was like, oh, the amount of actual effort that I need to put in here could not be less. I could walk in like a zombie with the clicker and punch in attendance and maybe answer one multiple choice question on the screen, and I was good.
Oh, I took an intro to film class.
I did too. That was awesome.
We just watch movies.
You just watch movies.
That's it. And then you like take a quiz.
As long as you watch the movie, you could not fail the class.
Right. No, it was beautiful. We would love to hear from you guys. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about the prospects that we talked about here on this episode, what you think about your team when it comes to the NFL draft. Also, talk to us about some, I don't want to say weird, but just like memorable, off the beaten path, maybe a little bit of an easy A classes that you guys took in whatever your higher education path was, if you had one. So I would love to hear that. If you guys got them, hit us up on Twitter at Tampa Bay Trey, at Connor J. Rogers. Hit us up in the YouTube comments as well as on Instagram. You can find us on Instagram. You can hit us up on Instagram as well. We're plenty active there too. We got one more podcast that we got for you coming up this week. You want to do rookie review? You want to make it happen?
It's time. Yeah, I would love to.
So let's do it. We're going to do a rookie review. Connor and I are going to watch a bunch of rookies. I don't know how we're going to set this up yet. So if you're still doing the bingo card and you're saying Connor and Trevor are figuring out the podcast as you're doing the podcast, check off the space, baby. Hopefully that was a late one for you. We're going to look at a lot of these rookies that have been playing in the NFL this year. And let's bring 5 to the table. Let's each bring 5 to the table. Some of them can overlap, but we'll try to make sure that not too many overlap for good or bad reasons. This is truly a rookie report. This isn't just, hey, these are the best rookies playing this season. Also, like, if one of us watches Trayvon Walker and we're like, yeah, Trayvon Walker's been silent as a church mouse, like, we could bring that up. So we'll see what it's going to be, but ultimately I wanted to give it, what is it?
I think we'll talk about this off air, but we'll do 5 categories. So you got like one superstar, one late round gem, one disappointment.
We should talk about this before we, announce the episode so that we don't
have our Zoom meetings on the podcast. In case you're wondering right now, this is what it's like.
All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to divide it up into 5 different categories. We're going to have 5 different guys each, and we're going to bring things to the table, both good and bad, taking a look at this rookie class as they have played so far in the NFL. Appreciate everybody listening and watching the show. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Connor Rogers. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow for the last episode of the week. This has been the NFL Stock Exchange Podcast.